funky foam, or fun foam, whatever you know it as. It's a product that I bet most of us have got, but I just don't know if you know how versatile this stuff is. So I'm going to show you how to make some stamps with it. So I've just got a piece here, and just roughly to go through something that you could use. I've got some leaves. I'm going to do my full project with these. I've got a piece of lace. I've got, I think this is off of a coffee filter. It's a rough piece of textured fabric, and I'd love to have a natural piece of wood grain, but I haven't, so I've got an embossing folder, which was the nearest to it. But literally anything that's got a nice texture can be used. So I'm going to try this one out because I haven't tried this one yet. Now what I find easier to do is you have to heat the foam. So when you heat the foam, you have to work quickly. So I found the best way to do this was just with a bit of repositionable glue or a glue stick or something. Just get that stuck down on a flat surface, because I find I get the best impression when I've got something heavy to press it against. So here's my heat gun. Now it's really, really important you don't overheat the foam. It is a plastic. So you just want to, you'll see the surface change and it'll start to curl a little. That's enough. You don't have to heat it anymore. So I'm just going to heat the foam. It will come away from the block a little bit, but it's just enough grab for me to get it stuck down. Can you see that's curling now and the surface has changed? You press it straight onto whatever you want to take the impression of. So press quite hard so you can get a really good impression. And then we lift up, and there you can see the texture. Now, okay, it didn't come out so good. I was a bit too slow. It's no problem. You heat it again and the texture comes out, and you can start again. This time I think I'll flip it over and see if that helps. Each one you'll find a different way of doing it to make it easier. And there we go. I hope you can see that texture on there. So I'm going to try and ink it up and see what happens. Now, for my project, I'm using acrylic paint, but just for speed, so you can see what's happening, I'm just going to use a regular ink pad. It doesn't have to be anything special, as long as it's a dye-based one, because they'll be easier to wash off afterwards. You can use a permanent, but it is going to stain the foam. So I hope you can see, I'm sort of rubbing it as well, because it's a spongy material, so it will take in, on the surface, it'll take in some of the ink. And then when we stamp that, let's see what we've got. And there we go, there's our texture. Okay, so that one is maybe a little bit undefined. So all I'm going to do is spray some water on it. Take it off. Heat it and start again, and this time maybe I'll try it this way. I'm going to try and heat it and try and get that knot of wood, but you can see I'm heating it now and the texture is disappearing. So I'm getting that ready to go straight away, straight on there, and pushing hard. You need 5 hands for this. Oh look, that's much better. I've got a much better impression with that one. So like I said, you find out the way that works best for you. Sometimes it's good to show you when it doesn't work as well as when it works, because then you know what to not to do. So I'll load up the ink onto it. The acrylic paint is will give you more definition, but just for speed I'm just doing it like this so you can see it. And then press hard. And there we go. Got a much more defined image on that. Maybe I could have used a darker ink so you could see it better, but you have to go with what you've got at the moment. Okay, I'm just going to, like I said, clean this off, and then I will do one in paint so you can see. It's just as easy. I quite like that it fades in and out because there's no then defined lines, and when you go to stamp it gives you much more more subtle finish, if that makes sense. So I've got my piece of non-stick sheet. Just need to pick a colour of paint. I'll go for just a blue. Now get your fingers in, and what you want to do is just to get a nice little puddle of paint, an even layer on your mat. You can see it's very fine. There's something stuck underneath there. That's it. Nice and flat. Okay, clean my hands. Now I'm going to put that into the paint, and like I said, the texture of the foam will take some of that paint in. Oops, and it will stick a little bit. Come on, there we go. I hope you can see that now. Got some lovely texture going on there. So we'll just stamp this and see what happens. The nice thing with the paint, you might get 2 or 3 prints with the same inking. Oh yes, that's come out nice. And let's give it another go, see what happens. It's quite a random experience. See, I quite like the second. It's more subtle. The first one is quite heavy, but I think they both work really well. But what a great background for, was ATC size, so that would be a great little background. Right, so as I was saying, clean up. As long as it is still fresh and new, you just spritz it. Hopefully not get it everywhere, which is what I've just done. Never mind. And then just wipe it off. Now the thing is, like I said, this isn't a permanent thing. If you don't heat it, that will stay there, no problem. If you heat it, that's going to disappear. So bear that in mind. If you're thinking, oh, I'll dry this off, it will disappear. But again, you can do it again. Now because it's on a flexible surface, let me just show you something. I've made a right mess. You could just pick some of it. I hope you can see that I'm rolling it in the paint, and then so you can just use some of it if you just want to get a little texture into something. You can see I've got quite a few stampings out of that. So that's the beauty of using this. And I've got to clean it again. Never mind. But you can see it's very versatile stuff. Now I'm going to show you a few examples because you don't need to see me do this 100 times. So I'm going to show you what the other textures has provided. So this is like a heavy kind of Hessian binding, and for that one I got a really nice texture. Let me find it here. So we've got that really nice texture going on there, which stamps out to this, and I've got another one there. So it's a really lovely sort of random but almost honeycomb. It's not, you're not going to get exactly what you think you're going to get, which is lovely, and that's what's the fun of it. So my next one is this piece of lace, and obviously you're going to get the negative because you're pressing it in and then stamping on the negative space of the texture. That gives some lovely impressions, and again, depending on how hard you press the stamp, you get more of the detail show up. And that one is that one there. I hope you can see it because I'm using white foam here. It's probably not the best, but I think the impressions give you a better idea. Then we've got this kind of plastic dotty screen, and that came out really nice. And again, I made use of the fact that I could put more pressure here and less there, so it's kind of a faded design, but it still works out really, really well. And I like the way you get the circle around the dots, something a bit different. Now the leaves themselves, you can leave them in their square form, but what I actually did is, I mean, this leaf here was bigger than my squares of foam because it would be hard to heat a large surface. That's the only restriction, that you couldn't get a uniform heating surface if the stamp is very large. So what I did was I had smaller squares, and I think you can see from this one that if I got my scissors and cut, it doesn't matter that the whole leaf is there. I just use the fact that there's some veining on the leaf, and I created a new shape from it. So you can see that one there. So that's exactly what I did. So although I only had 3 leaves, I created loads of different shapes. So that one's that leaf there, but I just cut it down. And then that one there is pretty much the whole thing, but again, missing the top, so I just cut it off. And then I created this shape myself, and I think I'll show you that one because that one's more technical. So let's get started. So I have my leaf, I have a piece of foam stuck to my block, and I'm just going to heat it. And again, I'll do what I did before, get it stuck down. Very quickly press it in to the leaf and pick up all that lovely texture. So I hope you can see that, but you can see I'm using obviously the most textured side. I hope that made sense. And now with a pen, I'm just going to draw my oaky shaped leaf out. If I draw it first, then if I go wrong, it's not the end of the world. I can just redo it. But there we go. Then I've got a oak leaf shape. So just cut that out dead simple. And again, I'm not following the lines exactly, they were just a guideline to get some proportions right. Nothing worse than getting halfway around the leaf and realise you cut half of it away that you shouldn't have. But I hope you can see it doesn't matter what shape leaf that you've used, you're just using the texture of the surface. Even though I didn't have an oak leaf, I made my own. So there's my oak leaf design, and it's ready for stamping. One other thing that I was going to show you is I created my own little acorns, and this doesn't require heating. And I've also done a textured piece on here which comes out like so. If you haven't got a heat gun, it's not important, because if you've got like a ball tool or a ballpoint pen, anything like that, you can actually press into the foam. Now it may or may not stay on the surface. I've noticed the very heavy impressions that I've made stay better than those lighter versions. But I think you can see if you make an impression into the foam, it stays long enough for you to take some stamping from it. So using this method, I made myself some little acorns. So I kind of got an acorn shape worked out, and then I went in with the ball tool and created the dips that I needed for it to work. And then to create the texture of the bottom of the little acorn cup, I've just pressed my ball tool into the surface, and then it's just a case of cutting it out. I'll leave a little tail for it. Get it straight, and there we go, there's another acorn. So I've got a couple here that I've been using, and like I said, if you just want to redefine it at any time, you can just go over the lines again just to make sure it stands out. So now we're ready to start a project. Okay, let's start our project. So I had in mind that I would be stamping out a lot of these leaves and create a picture with it. I'll show you how I'm starting. So I'm just gonna wet my surface of my paper as well as water down the paint, because I don't really want a white background. So all I'm doing is just getting a light colour down. So it's acrylic paint, so it'll mix with water, but once it's dry it won't shift, so it's perfect for this. So I can just, if I don't want so much colour while it's still wet, I can take it away. There we go, that's better. That's giving me what I want. So I've got a paler version now. Ideally, I want to dry this. Okay, so it's touch dry, that's fine. So I'm going to take my leaf, I'm going to take this one I think, and I've still got my repositionable glue on here, and I'm going to stick it onto here. Now I want to get my colour onto my, well, it's my temporary ink pad as it were. So I'm just going to mix some colour with my fingers, just get some kind of green going. really you can just use any colours. If you want to make your own green, blue and yellow, or if you've got a green, you can add more blue to it to make it of a greenier blue, or vice versa with the yellow. So just mix something up. So I'm going to take my leaf and press it in to the paint, and I knew that would happen. It's going to come unstuck, but have no fear, I'll stick it back on afterwards. There we can see, got a nice lot of colour going on. Let's try and get it stuck down. I think I've used it too many times, my repositionable. There we go, you can see the leaf, and I quite like, it's not perfect. This is the whole point about it not being perfect. And if you get smudgy edges, it doesn't matter, because the next step is we're going to cut it out. But there we go, now it's looking good. And I quite like mixing the colour, because it means you have little bits of different colours going on. So ideally I'd dry this first. Oh, actually I'll show you what I've done, that's easier. So anyway, you get the principle. And the little acorns, exactly the same, but I've used a little bit more of the brown colour with those. But I've got some already made up. So you can see them all there. So I'm going to pick an easy one, because I don't want to be here all day, but you can see what I'm doing, just cutting out the leaves. And like I said, if it didn't stamp brilliantly, the leaf doesn't have to be that size, you can make it smaller. So it's not the end of the world if it doesn't work. So you can see the ones that I've already completed, and what I've done is I've put a little bit of brown around the edge of them, on all of them. And can you see on the acorns, they're starting to really look like acorns now, and I think I'll probably, if I shape them a little bit with my finger, they will look even more acorn-like. There we go. And like I said, you can fold them a little bit to make them look more leaf-like, all manipulated with your fingers to try and get some shape into them. So they start to become more realistic. There we go. Anyway, so you get the idea. So I've got to have a background now. So I'm going to put them all aside and get back to them. So here's the board I'm going to work on. It's just a piece of chipboard that I have painted blue. And I'm kind of thinking along the lines of a thing going round like so. Whoops, throwing them everywhere, just to give me a rough idea. Change up the leaf shape as well as the colours. Kind of don't want all the one colour in one place, so I'm not too uniform so it looks boring. So you can see, I think I need to put a lighter one in there. Anyway, you get the idea. So I'm thinking along the lines of something like this, and then with my little acorns tucked in, like so. Need something in the middle. So I was looking through my stencils and I found this, Live a Thankful Life, and I think that would look lovely right in the centre. Let's get these out of the way again and make sure I get that in the centre, should be good. I'm going to use a dark blue and just apply it with a sponge Don't want too much paint because you don't want it seeping right through and causing issues. So I'm going to press it right down. If you are concerned, you can always tape it down as well. You don't have to just hold it. I'm impatient. That's my problem. I haven't got time to tape things down. But what I really want to do is make sure I haven't got too much paint, because the worst thing you can do is put too much paint on. And little tapping motions. And there we go. Now if you don't have a stencil, or your words, you haven't got anything with words on, you could just write it by hand, or you could use a computer, type up some words and print them out and then just trace them on. So that's another useful way of doing it. So you don't have to have a stencil to do this part. Okay, my base is nearly ready, but I'm gonna use one of my textures to add some more shading around the corners. Now I want a blue, but not as dark as the blue I had for the wording, so I'm just going to mix it up. Create a little puddle of paint and wipe my finger, and then I'm going, like I said, use it just as it is and just shape it. Just create a little bit of texture around the edges. You can see that. Oh, it's looking good. That's what I wanted. So just create that little shading. Okay, I'll just carry on with that. Okay, so there's my edge. I think I will darken it slightly with the sponge afterwards, but for the meantime, let's get on with the main area. Okay, so I just really want to work out where my leaves are going to go. It's a very simple process now. Okay, so that's a rough idea about where I want to place it. So now we've just got to get it stuck down. Okay, to finish the project, I am going to use some PVA glue. And as you can see, some of the leaves look better when they're raised, and this is where the spare bits of the foam come in. Because if you cut little squares and then glue them, you can create your own little sticky pads. And you can raise the things off of the surface. So you can see that there, just stuck with that. I'm only going to do a few, just so you can see what I'm doing. And obviously the little acorns just need a little, get some glue out, just need a little bit behind them, like so, and they're held in place. So this is a great way of making your own little sticky pads and creating the depth that you need on the piece of work. So I'm going to complete that and then I'll show you how I finished it off. So here's the finished project. I have put some extra touches on it just because I thought the blue and the green were too separate. I've introduced the green into the background along with that ochre colouring, and I've also put it on the lettering and then highlighted it with white, which I've then picked up on the acorns, and I've given the acorns a little bit more definition just to make them look more rounded. There we go, our finished project, and who'd have thought that you could create something with just some kids' funky foam. So I hope you give it a try and just have fun. And thanks for watching.